All right, so I think we are rounding up at time to begin. So people might still be joining us, but I think we're good to go for now. So I'll be the MC today. My name is Tobin. I'm helping out Block 64 with this webinar. And in just a few short seconds, I'm going to be handing off to your speakers today for this awesome presentation about Copilot. So without further ado, take it away, Craig and Phil.
Well, really, thanks so much, Tobin. Really appreciate everyone taking time out of their busy schedule to be here. Happy holidays. I wanted to take the opportunity as well to welcome new and existing partners for joining us today in and around really, I think, an exciting conversation about Copilot readiness. My name is Craig Hollington Bator. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Block 64, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my colleague, the smarter person on the call, Phil Carson. Phil, I'll pass it to you for a quick introduction.
Yeah, thank you very much, Craig. As mentioned, my name is Phil Carson. I'm a solutions expert here at Block 64. And once again, we just wanted to thank you for joining so that we can, share a little bit of inside information with you about Copilot.
Wonderful. Well, we thought we'd also provide some context for the conversation today. And we really believe that starts with the state of generative AI and really what that means in the enterprise and what that means in 2024 and beyond. But with that comes a conversation around the keys to adoption. I mean, who are the ideal customers for this type of assessment or this type of solution? Who perhaps will be ready in a year from now? And what is the guide to success to get there? From there, we're very excited to release our newly minted Copilot Readiness Assessment that you as our valued partners can offer your end customers. And really, that's our offer today, not to put the cart before the horse, but that's a big part of our call to action. And we'll end the day with a very quick Q&A. But before we get into the conversation around generative AI, just a bit about who Block 64 is if you're not familiar. Really, since 2012, our automated discovery and assessment platform has really been trusted by some of the world's most informed IT solutions providers, like many that you see on the screen here. And they've really leveraged our technology and an assessment-led approach to increase opportunities with their customers, streamline sales, and really maximize value to their end customer, i.e. the conversation around Copilot. So what we hope today is that you understand how Block 64 is going to set you up for success with a conversation around Copilot with your customer. And we can do that in a couple ways. One is customer readiness, making sure that you're speaking to the right people, and we give you the information to do so. And part of that is the recommendations that we'll be providing through the lens of that newly minted Copilot Readiness Assessment. Please leave rest assured that a big part of this is Block 64 doing the heavy lifting, and I'll talk a bit about that moving forward. But if we do that well, you'll walk away from this call with an understanding on how you can improve your pre-sales capabilities through this conversation, how you can potentially provide implementation recommendations for your customers while providing ongoing insights that will relate and really result in a more of a sticky conversation as you go. As I said, Phil will be taking you through really what the engagement looks like. But before we do that, why don't we talk a bit about generative AI? Phil, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't think it's any real secret that generative AI has easily been the hottest topic of discussion in the past year. Gartner themselves expect that by 2026, up to 80% of enterprise organizations worldwide will have adopted some form of generative AI tool. We've already started to see it start to take place with Microsoft 365 Copilot. Some of the world's largest organizations, we're talking Visa, Pfizer, KPMG, Ernst & Young, have already started to begin that adoption of Microsoft 365 Copilot. And looking into the future, by 2030, it's expected that the generative AI market represents something around the $600 to $700 billion market value. This is something that we're still in the relative early stages. Over the next few years, we're definitely going to start to see a lot more development and a lot more implementation. Speaking of implementation and speaking of adoption, you might be trying to ask yourself, as a services provider, who is the ideal customer for something like Microsoft 365 Copilot? So currently, for anyone that is unaware, M365 Copilot is being targeted at enterprise customers first. In the future, we expect that this will start to trickle down into more smaller and medium-sized businesses, but currently, primary target is around enterprise customers. That does kind of come out when we start to talk about the numbers. So the Microsoft 365 Copilot, if you're unfamiliar, this is a $30 USD per user per month add-on. It is currently only an add-on that is available for Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 users, and there is a 300 seat minimum for Microsoft 365 Copilot add-on. What that means is for a customer, that represents roughly a minimum of $108,000 a year for Copilot alone. Right? And don't forget that is on top of your existing M365 licensing. So as mentioned, primarily targeted at larger size customers up front. Down the line, we expect it to, maybe be more digestible for smaller and medium-sized organizations. Now to talk a little bit about, actual M365 Copilot adoption, one of our benefits, or one of the benefits that Microsoft and Block64's partnership has, is the ability for us to pass on key information around Copilot directly to our partner network. Okay, so the first thing that we want to share here is specifically the 3 keys to Microsoft 365 Copilot adoption. Starting out with the first key, this is a security first conversation. Okay, Microsoft themselves are positioning Copilot as a zero trust conversation. Okay? The thought process here is to make sure that your data is secure, make sure that your users are locked down, make sure that your environment is safe and secure and that no one can potentially get in there. That way, when you go to introduce something like an AI model that potentially has access to your files and to your network, but by making sure that everything is secure in the first place, it kind of prevents any potential oversharing of data. The second key to Copilot adoption is the licensing justification. As we saw in the previous slide, this is going to be a fairly significant cost investment from a customer's point of view. We're talking minimum $100,000 a year for Copilot alone. So taking a look at this, and one of the benefits of the Block64 assessment here is that this isn't just a getting ready for Copilot. This can potentially also be a conversation around helping your customers move into something like a Microsoft E3 license. Okay? The final key is standardization. Making sure to, 1, cut redundancies in software to minimize spend, right? You might have a customer who has multiple teams purchasing multiple different suites of software from multiple vendors. Well, why doesn't the organization standardize in order to, 1, save costs, 2, reduce complexity, and 3, make sure that all of the users are utilizing software that is Copilot compatible. Okay? Now, as a partner, collecting those 3 pieces of information and gathering that information can be somewhat tricky and a little bit daunting. And this is where the Block64 Copilot Readiness Assessment can help you guys out. So I'll take you through the typical flow of a typical Block64 assessment if you've never gone through one. But for Copilot Readiness, we start off with a questionnaire over on the left-hand side. The questionnaire is mainly used to gather, intangible information, stuff like what is an organization's policies or procedures around specific things. Does the customer have specifically documented baselines for deploying applications or to deploying new devices into the environment, right? We then mix that questionnaire data with data that we collect from our actual agentless discovery application. Now, the agentless discovery application, the reason why we deploy this is that it's good to have a singular source of truth in the customer's environment. So by scanning the environment, we're able to pull back what is actually there and what is actually installed, right? Sometimes if you work with a customer and you're manually pulling information or manually extracting information, whether it be through questionnaires or surveys, it does get a bit daunting. It can be a bit tedious, and the data that you get back isn't guaranteed to be accurate, right? So during the capturing phase of the assessment, we typically like to let the tool run for anywhere between 1 to 4 weeks to make sure that we are capturing as much information around things like software installs, users, as well as hardware. The fourth step is the analyze step. So this is where a Block64 analyst will actually build you and your customer a customized report that covers everything from zero trust to software and hardware optimization and finishes off with M365 Copilot readiness. From there, Block64 and yourself would work together to present that information to the customer to give them, areas of optimization, areas of shortfall, as well as just how to prepare your organization for a potential Copilot deployment. Now, as mentioned, I will take you through a demo of what the Block64 assessment actually looks like. So I've pulled a few key slides from our actual assessment deck that I've put together here for you. So some of the information that the Block64 agentless application will pull back is stuff like Office applications, and then calculate things like supportability on them. So, without Block64, if you were doing this a bit more of a manual approach and you wanted to collect every install of Office, every install of Visio, and every install of Project, you would either have to rely on customer tracking lists that they've, kept updating over the past 20 years, which may start to lose accuracy as time goes on. Alternatively, if you manually wanted to go out and try to find out every Office, Visio, and Project, that would be a huge time sink from your team to actually spend going into that. But it's something that we include as part of this. Or, for example, other application level security. So, part of what the Block64 Copilot Readiness Assessment does is rather than just looking at Microsoft applications, we will also take a look for things like outdated Adobe installs in a customer's environment that are actually introducing vulnerabilities. Once again, to do this manually, you would manually need to look up every piece of software in the customer's environment and look it up against something like the National Vulnerability Database in order to actually pull this information back. So by using the Block64 automated assessment, it allows you guys to act, a lot more agile and a lot more efficiently. To cover things like the identity portion of Zero Trust, we will scan Active Directory to actually identify, potentially unused Active Directory accounts that are still enabled in the customer's environment, potential ways for an attacker to get into an organization's IT environment. We will cover topics such as software consolidation and software justification, identifying overlaps in, let's say, something like security software in a customer's environment, potentially, looking for teams that are purchasing multiple different antiviruses or teams that have installed free antiviruses. So there's two conversations that we have here. One is around the consolidation of product in order to save money. The second is around consolidation of product in order to standardize and make sure that the customer's environment or that the customer's IT staff knows what's in their environment. As mentioned, this isn't just a Copilot assessment. This can also be something like a Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 assessment by comparing features like Defender for Endpoint. Towards the end of this deliverable, or around the end of this assessment, we do give Copilot readiness scores. So based off a few key prerequisites that Microsoft has determined for deploying Microsoft Copilot. So the first one that we see on the left is customers with compatible licensing. So as mentioned, taking a look at all of the Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 licenses that we see, taking into account something like the customer's zero trust maturity scores. Do they need to improve the devices score, or do they need to potentially work on their data domain? Taking a look at things like the usage of OneDrive accounts or Teams usage. If you're helping IT staff and helping IT managers, CIOs, managers, executives make the decision, are my users actually going to use Copilot if we purchase it for them? We have the ability to actually track and see, are they using OneDrive? Are they using Teams? How much of their Microsoft suite are they actively using and will get the benefit out of? And that really drills down and kind of summarizes in a score such as the local Office installs. The ability to actually see and say, only 50% of your desktop users are actually using local installs of Office. Now, that is Copilot compatible to use the web versions, but you'll get the full functionality out of something like a local Office install. Okay? That all culminates together in a final Copilot readiness score, essentially saying, your customer or your environment is 63% Copilot ready. Well, down at the bottom, here are the steps that you can take to increase that score. If you do want to hit that 100% readiness, make sure that all of your users are licensed with a Microsoft 365 license. Make sure that all of your users are using Teams and OneDrive. Make sure that all of your users are actually installing local installs of Office. As mentioned, the main purpose of the Block 64 Copilot Readiness Assessment is to make sure that you as partners are able to, execute these en masse, execute these, and rather than you having to do all of the manual lifting around data collection and around analysis, let us take care of that. We've built specialized tooling and specialized assessments in, partial conjunction with Microsoft to actually bring this to your customers. Okay, so as mentioned, tons of information here, very useful. It's a Microsoft security framework conversation. It's also a Microsoft 365 Copilot assessment.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Phil, for that. We hope that everyone's as excited as we are over this opportunity to provide really a proactive conversation and solution to your end customer. In the spirit of that, we wanted to provide a call to action that we hope is conducive to that conversation. And really, it's an extended premium free trial of the M365 Copilot assessment lifted and delivered by Block 64. So we will work with you up to a 4-week period in an environment up to 2,000 endpoints to deliver this to you and potentially your customer if you'd like. And we're offering as well someone from our analytics team and our consulting team to deliver the results back to you. All you'll need to do is to register before January 15th, and you can do that through block64.com/copilot. We will work with you to ensure this is delivered before March 31st, 2024. And again, to reiterate, Block 64, as your trusted partner, is here to do that heavy lifting, to start that conversation with Copilot, so that as this conversation continues to get more and more progressive and that market opens up, that we're collectively ready to help our collective customer. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for their valued time, obviously. Wish everyone a happy holiday, and just reiterate that we're here to help with this conversation. We want to help, and we really believe if we do, we're going to really provide value to your end customer and to you as well, who are our customer. So thanks to everyone for taking the time. Happy holidays, and we'll be talking soon.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.